So the last round of the Rugby Championship and the second match of the Bledisloe Cup taking place between the All Blacks and the Wallabies this weekend. It's going to be an epic one. Wellington, not exactly the greatest city when it comes to the All Blacks record in recent times, which brings this game just that little bit more anticipation because we never know what can happen in the Windy City. But in this preview, we will be looking through at the starting lineups, the key players to watch out for, also some interesting stats between these two sides, especially in Wellington, and then at the end a prediction of who I think will be winning this game, but not just myself, also a special guest at the end as well. But starting with the All Blacks lineup, they have gone very similar to what they had last week. Overall, not really taking too many risks here, going with the strong side with minimal changes involved. In the first 15, but looking through at the starting lineup, it is Ethan de Groot, Cody Taylor, and Tyrell Lomax in the front row. Cody Taylor, for me, has been the best number 2 across the whole of the Rugby Championship. Ethan de Groot recently returning from his injury, having 40 minutes last game up against the Wallabies. He's going head-to-head with Taniela Tupou here once again, and that is not an easy task for someone just returning from a neck injury. Tyrell Lomax, he's also been strong throughout the Rugby Championship. In the locking duo, it is Scott Barrett at number 4 with number 5 being Tupou. When you talk about standout players for the All Blacks, someone who has consistently put performance after performance is not the All Blacks captain. It is Tupou in that locking duo. Barrett, some would say he's underperformed throughout this Rugby Championship, but would love to finish it on a high up against the Wallabies. Here in the loose forward trio, number 6, Wallace Satiti. He has been outstanding since taking that 6 jersey. And the thing is, with the selections we've seen from Scott Robinson throughout this Rugby Championship, if it wasn't for that Ethan Blackadder injury, would we have even seen Wallace Satiti for the All Blacks as of yet? We've got to ask that question because you look at someone like a Billy Proctor and you look at a few of those other young players that were brought into the side, Wallace Satiti being one of them. If Blackadder hadn't gone down, would we have seen the standout performance that he had up against the Springboks? Would he have almost cemented himself as the All Blacks number 6? It just shows sometimes you just need that one opportunity, and if you make the most of it, you can earn yourself a lot of starting minutes, unless your name is Billy Proctor. Number 7, they have gone with Sam Cane. It is his 100th game for the All Blacks. He has had a couple rough games in a row, so I feel like with the fact that this is his century, he will want to really go out with a bang because this will be his last game in New Zealand, theoretically. Unless, of course, something drastic happens and he plays a few more games next year, which I don't believe is the goal for Sam Cane. So he does want, of course, a big game on home soil. Number 8, Ardie Savia. Now, I would say his home ground, but he is going to Moana Pacifica next year for Super Rugby Pacific, but I'm sure the Wellingtonians will still be very happy to see him. Number 9, this is where they have gone with TJ Perenara. Once again, similar boat to Sam Cane, his last game in New Zealand before he heads over to Japan. Number 10, Beauden Barrett. So this is a bit of an interesting switch. They have decided to give Barrett that 10 jersey rather than Damian McKenzie. Now, the reason I say it's interesting is because when the first initial squad was announced for New Zealand, Beauden Barrett was down as one of the 2 fly halves that New Zealand had selected. Now, with the injury of Stephen Perofeta, I believe that then brought Beauden Barrett from that 10 jersey into 15, and then that allowed Harry Plummer to get his 2 minutes. But for Beauden Barrett, he was initially, like I said, listed as that fly half, only getting very minimal chances in that 10 jersey throughout the Rugby Championship. But he is an entertaining player. Him and TJ, this is going to be a throwback to the old school Hurricanes days. Both a lot older now, more experienced. Hopefully can get that backline firing for the ABs. In the midfield, it is Anton Leonard-Brown who replaces the injured Geordie Barrett, and number 13, Rico Ioane. He had a good game last week up against Australia, is starting to find his form, which is great news for New Zealand, as he hasn't really found it at times throughout the Rugby Championship, but he did score last week, so starting to get a little bit of momentum behind him. Number 11, Caleb Clark. Number 14, Sevu Reece. And number 15, once again, they have gone with Will Jordan. Now, initially last week, he was going to be off the right wing, but moves to 15 for this contest. But that is the starting lineup for the All Blacks. For the Australians, they've also made hardly any changes, only a couple when it comes to that back line. Other than that, their forward pack, just like the All Blacks, is identical. Number 1, Angus Bell. Number 2, Matt Faisler. And number 3, Taniela Tupou, a lot of power, like I mentioned last week when they came onto the field. We didn't really see it to the same extent that I thought we would. Maybe that was because of the quick nature of the game early on, but I think that bench for Australia seemed to make more of the impact. That included Brandon Paenga, Amosa, James Slipper, and then also Alan Alaalatoa. Now, the only man who isn't there for them this week would be James Slipper. Instead, it is Isaac Kailea in the locking duo. It is Nick Frost and Jeremy Williams. Now, Australia at the moment have stolen the most lineouts out of any side throughout the Rugby Championship. Lukan Salakaia-Lotto looking very good later on in last week's game. And the loose forward trio, Rob Bellatini will once again be the 6, Fraser McReight at 7, and then Harry Wilson as the number 8. Now, Wilson and also Fraser McReight, I thought, did brilliantly up against the All Blacks in Sydney. McReight managing to score himself a try. Harry Wilson having carry after carry and having some big hits along the way as well. Just seemed to be that his goal was to put as much brute force into tackles as he could. Anytime the All Blacks coming down from that high ball, the first man there was Harry Wilson to land that massive blow. But in the back line, number 9, we do see a change in that halfback jersey. It will be Jake Gordon rather than Nick White, who has been taken completely out of this Australian side. Number 10, once again sticking with the youngster Noah Lolesio, although this time rather than having Tom Liner off the bench, they have got Ben Donaldson in the midfield, Hunter Paisami alongside Len Ikitau. Paisami has a decent record up against the New Zealanders. Dylan Peach moves into the left wing rather than Marika Korombeti, number 14. They have stuck with Andrew Callaway, and same can be said about 15. It is Tom Wright having over 100 metres carried up against New Zealand last week. But those are the starting lineups. In terms of the key players, now last week we did who needed the big games for their side, and I think we're going to do that once again for the All Blacks. Starting in that front row, I'm going to say Ethan de Groot needs a massive performance here. At the moment, that number 1 jersey for me is still a little bit up for grabs. Recently returning from injury, de Groot only getting half a game last week up against the Australians. Tamaiti Williams getting the other half, but neither of them, in my opinion anyway, have fully cemented that jersey heading into the November international. So if de Groot can have a big showing here in the front row up against a massive man in Taniela Tupou, I think that would confirm his spot heading into the November matches. Also in this team, I think who needs a big game is TJ Perenara, because we've seen Cortez Ratama the last couple of weeks go from strength to strength. So to be taken out of the starting side, and I am going to say it, TJ here, I believe has been selected because it is his last game in New Zealand, not because it is his form that has got him there. If you're basing it off form, it should have been Cortez every day of the week. So that is why TJ needs a massive last showing on New Zealand soil, because we haven't really seen that same impact from Ratama when he makes his way off the bench. It is when he starts a game that he is at his most dangerous. So let's see whether or not TJ can help him out and get the All Blacks off to a flyer. But of course, it is not how you start, it is how you finish. And the All Blacks haven't been able to finish a game in a very long time. 5 games in a row now, 20 minutes at the end of each of those games, 100 minutes in total, that the All Blacks haven't not just scored a try, but haven't scored a single point. That is insane, because this is an All Black side that they have the reputation of normally when you get to that last quarter of a game, that's when they speed up, and that's when they normally win games, get those extra points. But we haven't seen that from this All Blacks outfit as of yet. So the question is, off the bench, is Damian McKenzie going to be able to do that? Now, of course, in the starting lineup, that man's been very 50-50 in terms of what he's been able to do. He's had some great moments, he's had some poor ones. But off the bench, I wonder whether or not that is the motivation that Damian McKenzie needs to go out there and have an absolutely awesome performance, because at the end of the day, his spot is now on the line. As much as Scott Robertson throughout the rest of the Rugby Championship has said, Damian's our guy at 10, he's going to be there, we're going to back him. Now going with Beauden Barrett here makes me think Scott Robertson, is he changing his mind? Because McKenzie is still in the side, so he's not theoretically being rested here, because or else they would have gone with Harry Plummer, guy who only got a few minutes in the first match. So McKenzie's going to need a big one, and I'm looking forward to seeing whether or not can do it. But for the Australians, in terms of big performances, I want to see a big game from Rob Bellatini here, because Yes, he had a few good moments up against New Zealand last week, but I think he was overshadowed by the two other men in that loose forward trio. Fraser McReight, I thought, had a tremendous game. Harry Wilson, he really stepped up to the occasion as the Aussie skipper. But Rob Valetini, we're normally used to seeing him have those big carries round the side of the breakdown, some barnstorming runs. We didn't really get that too much. And yes, he was decent defensively, but I also like to see him with the ball in hand. So hopefully we see a big game from Rob Valetini here. I think that Jake Gordon in that number 9 jersey, this is a great opportunity for him, but he has to play well because there are still a lot of people begging to see Tate McDermott get that starting lineup spot. But for some reason, no matter who the coach is, they prefer McDermott coming off the bench in the second half. They have gone with Nick White. They do normally go with Jake Gordon now this year under Joe Schmidt. So let's see whether or not Gordon can step up to the plate as well. And then the last man who needs a big performance, I said it last week, it's Andrew Callaway. I still don't think we saw enough of him in the game last week up against the All Blacks. He had to do a bit on defence, but we still didn't get to see that running game of Andrew Callaway, which made him so dangerous and originally was the thing that broke him into that Australian lineup because he was so great, whether he was on attack or defending. But those are the starting lineups and the key players. Now we move on to some interesting stats about this All Blacks and Wallabies rivalry. New Zealand have got a very impressive winning streak going over the Australians at the moment. They have won their last 8 games up against them, and of the last 13, they have only lost the 1. Now, they also drew that game, which was only a few years ago. It feels like yesterday, but the All Blacks, like I mentioned, 8 in a row up against the Australians, and of the last 5 that they have played up against Australia in Wellington, they have won 4, and they have drawn 1. Now, that is quite substantial, because when we talk about Sky Stadium, or we talk about Wellington, New Zealand's record in the capital is not great. In recent times, of their last 7 games, they have only won 1 in Wellington. And that was up against the French in 2018. Since then, they have had 4 losses and 2 draws. So that is something that surely is a little bit on the AB's mind. And I have seen some people justify Scott Robertson's selection here, saying he's gone with one of his strongest teams because of that Wellington record. But at the same time, they've gone with some pretty strong sides throughout those losses that they've had. So I feel like this game was still the perfect opportunity to give a few more players a bit more of a go. But now we are up to that stage of a prediction. Now, last game, it was only separated by the 3 points, which was a lot closer than myself and a lot of other people did anticipate for that game. The All Blacks, they started brilliantly, but Australia, they finished the game with a lot of intent, and they all but managed to pull off a victory. New Zealand need to finish a game strongly, and off their bench, they've got Ratama, they have got McKenzie, they've got David Havili, which I think was the decision that raised the most eyebrows, although Razor himself said it so that they have specialist cover in that number 12 jersey. But is Havili the type of player later on in a contest that can change a game and get New Zealand scoring once again if they start to slow down as the match wears on? That is the big question. But for me, score prediction wise, I do see New Zealand, even though they have a poor record in Wellington, I can see them winning this game, and I am going to say they win it 32 points to 22. Now, I don't know whether or not that will be including some points in the last 20 minutes or so, because we are still yet to see how the All Blacks fire back and what their tactic will be to score tries later on in the game. But I'm going with the 10-point margin, New Zealand to win it and go 2-0 up in the Bledisloe Cup. But I am not the only one who will be giving my prediction on this video. I've also got my mum, so she is about to give you her prediction for the second test.
Score prediction would be All Blacks 45, Australia 15.
Who do you think needs a big game here?
Who needs a big game?
Yeah.
Well, Bowden Barrett, because I've picked him at first 5, and TJ Perenara. Otherwise, why did they do that? Rieko Ioane needs a big game because Proctor should have been there. Havili needs a big game off the bench. Otherwise, why was he picked? It hasn't really been a positive season for the All Blacks, has it? Let's face it. How many games they lost? New coach, same players. I thought he was going to do something different. I suppose he picked Wallace Satiti for a start. Don't want to harp on about it, but the best first 5 in Super Rugby came on for 2 minutes, and he's not even playing. And I don't know. I know teams go through their ups and downs, but come on, let's play like All Blacks, not like school kids. Sorry. You'll edit that. See you later.
Nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. We will be live on the channel doing the commentary, so be sure to check that out. It is a 7:05 PM kickoff here in New Zealand on Saturday. We will be starting an hour before kickoff, though, to look through at Rugby Championship stats, the players, and have a big chat all about the game just before it does take place. But do let me know your score prediction in the comments down below, and also who you think will be the man of the match for this contest. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and I will see you all for the next one.